Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have the pleasure of checking out another of these brand new TNG models. This is officially the 5th, I believe, to hit my channel, so very exciting to actually have quite a few reviews of these guys up. And this is another one that I think looks really cool. We actually have a Smilodon from them as well, which I'm loving the fact that they've created so many prehistoric mammals. We really don't get enough. Smilodon, we do get a lot of Smilodon figures, but there is a large amount of prehistoric mammals we don't get many figures of, and of course we have TNG here that has been supplying us with quite a bit of them, which is super cool if you ask me. As far as the packaging goes, you can see it looks just like the packaging for the last few. We've got the really nice TNG logo there, the Smilodon name right there, as well as of course an image here of the figure right on the front, and then over here on the side you have information on the species itself, and then here on the back, your standard information you usually find. Pretty much the same thing when you flip it around, not too much difference going on when it comes to the packaging. So let's go ahead and pop this open and check out our Smilodon. And here it is, and I am actually super impressed with this. This is probably one of the figures that, even though I was excited about it, I was almost like the least excited about this one because we've had so many Smilodons in the past. But looking at this here, I am very impressed. This might be one of the best TNG models so far, but overall, I think this entire line has been beyond fantastic so far. They have some excellent figures that always have really highly detailed sculpts and some really impressive paint apps, and that's exactly what I see yet again on this Smilodon. So, definitely way better than I was expecting. Let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at it right now. So, starting up here at the head sculpt of our Smilodon, first of all, you can see that we have quite the ferocious positioning for the head and mouth area. It's obviously letting out some sort of a vocalization, but at the same time, you could potentially look at this and think maybe the Smilodon's letting out a yawn, because it is in a sitting position. It doesn't look like it would be in any kind of a ferocious sort of a position, maybe like an attack position, so maybe it's just yawning. I'm not entirely sure, but they really did do a good job of sculpting out the detailing here of the face to show the movement off. You can see how the snout's kind of scrunched up a little bit because the mouth is open so wide. The stretching of the skin here running along the mouth also looks really nicely done, and the inside of the mouth is actually extremely well done. We've got quite a bit of teeth going on in here on the inside of the mouth, and they're all painted so nicely, and you can also see that in general, the detailing is really well done, as is the paintwork. We have a nice kind of a dark pinkish or a dark reddish wash, and then an alternate pinkish tone in there, and it all sports a nice gloss coat, so it looks super realistic, super lifelike. And I also love that they've kind of given the teeth a white coloration, but then applied sort of a yellowish brown sort of a wash, and you can see some of the teeth have that kind of yellowish look, some have the whitish look, and you can see even here on the saber teeth of our Smilodon, they as well sport that kind of alternate tone of color, but they transition to a white tip for the saber teeth, and you can also pick out how nice the detailing looks there as well. So the mouth area is extremely impressive on this Smilodon. As you move up, you also have a nice gloss coat for the nose of your Smilodon. You can see we have kind of a dark purplish tone, and I actually think I might have said pink for the inside of the mouth. I meant purple, but you can see that we have a purplish tone there for the nose as well, and you can see again that the sculpting of the actual fur and fine detail moving through the head of the Smilodon is really well done, as is the paintwork. Again, the paintwork looks honestly incredible. You can also see we have a black that kind of outlines the mouth. That as well kind of sports a gloss coat to it. The eyes are painted really nicely. You can see that there with a brownish tone and a black pupil. They also sport, again, that gloss coat like you would expect them to, and they look very well done. There's kind of a black outline around the eye as well. And you can also take notice to how nice the paintwork is. Again, you could if my camera would stay focused, but you can see all sorts of variation of color as we have some lighter tones and then variations of browns. There's also kind of some brown spots and stuff, and it even appears as though maybe there's a grayish wash through the course of the entire figure to, again, really amp up the realism of the paintwork. And the transitions are really smooth as well when it comes to, the transitions between the colors. And you can also see some more of that kind of spotting up here with that darker brown. And how good does that fur detail, look, it is fantastic. You can see how wavy it is as you move back here into the neck of the Smilodon. The ears are also sculpted really nicely. We do have some alternate darker tones of color for the insides of the ears of the Smilodon, which look really quite nice. There's also a nice turn in the neck. You can see it's got its head turned to the right, and you can see that kind of with like the creasing and everything going on right there in the neck region. As you move down, you can see that we have that scruffier fur there in the neck, but as we move down, we get a bit more of a tame sort of an appearance to the fur, but it still, again, is really nicely done when it comes to the detailing. You can also pick out the shoulder blade there, and we also pick up this very interesting design as we have kind of like striping going on through the course of the body, and there's like a brown and a white that kind of stripes together moving through the course of the Smilodon. Very interesting coloration, very interesting color scheme, something I've never seen portrayed on a Smilodon before, and I think it actually is, nice because of that, kind of a breath of fresh air with something so different. But as you move down, you can again see the tensing in the front limbs here because, again, it's kind of just sitting there. So these legs are sort of supporting, well, not even sort of, these legs here are supporting the entire front half of the animal because it's resting in the rear. So you can see again that the legs are tensing quite nicely. We've got a really nice looking foot sculpt, nicely sculpted toes. The nails are painted with a nice glossy black. You can see more, again, variation of color as you move through. You also have some scruffier fur leading off of the back here of that leg. As you move back, you can see again some more scruffier fur kind of hanging off of the underside of the Smilodon, as well as again how smooth that transition is as you move up. Like, it is really, really nicely done. And the stripes as well, which I kind of, coming into this, I thought maybe they'd look a little bit off, a little bit, out of place on the model in person. They actually don't. I think they look really good and also really quite natural. As you move back here a little bit further, you can again make out the rear leg, how it's folded and stuff as it's taking a seat. Even with that, you can kind of make out some muscle definition and stuff. You can definitely take notice to the knee right there. The rear leg also looks good as you move down into the foot. Again, variation of color leading down, nicely painted nails with that, glossy black. And then as you lead out into the tail has a nice curve to it, nice striping leading down the tail, again with actually two different variations of browns, it looks like. I can definitely see variation of color in the browns of that tail. And then you can see again the scruffier fur moving along the underside, and we have that same style of scruffy fur moving through pretty much the entire underside of the Smilodon. And then when you look at the undersides of the feet, you can see that the pads are also painted with that same similar glossy black to what we had seen on the nails. When you come over here to the opposing side, you can again see now how the skin, well actually I should say the fur is stretching here because the neck is turned so nicely to the right. Again, you can really pick out how nice and wavy the fur is as you move down that scruffier area of the neck. The legs are pretty close to the same position. You can see this one's back slightly compared to what we see on the opposing leg, and you can see almost the same thing going on here with the rear legs, although I think they're a little bit closer to the same spot as what we see on the opposing side. You could again see the scruffier fur, and as you look through, again, just so much color added to this. Really, really professional, really high quality paint job to this Smilodon. And then you move back out again to the tail. So that is actually quite beautiful, and you can also see it's fairly small overall, a little bit smaller than I kind of expected it to be, but considering its smaller size, man, is that an impressive Smilodon. The actual paint work and sculpt work on this is incredible for the size. Definitely another killer release from TNG. As far as a size goes, for a length from the tail to the snout, you're looking at right around 5 inches, or maybe just shy of 5 inches, or about 12.5 centimeters. And then for a height, a little bit, I'd say about 3¼ inches, or closing in on 8.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Smilodon, definitely showing off the fairly small size overall, but again, I would say very impressive at the same time because the sculpting and detailing and paintwork and everything is insanely impressive for something of this size, just continuing to show off how good TNG really is. But for another comparison, here is the Papo Smilodon next to our TNG version, which you can see the Papo version's a little bit longer, but the body of the TNG version might be of a similar size if it were actually, standing up and spread out like the Papo version is. So they actually look really cool together. They definitely help to make a pretty nice pride of Smilodon if you had both of these. But for another comparison, there is the more recent offering of the Smilodon Cub from Papo next to the TNG version, just to help for another comparison and also just to give you a visual of how cool they look together. Here is the Takara Tomy version of the Smilodon, if you happen to have this one. Obviously, quite a bit of difference in size between these two, but for another comparison, we have the Mojo Fun version of the Smilodon. Again, another instance of these kind of looking like they fit together really nicely. Obviously, two very different color schemes for them, but similar in size yet again. For another comparison, now this time the size difference is quite massive, as we have the recurve version of the Smilodon next to our TNG version, and I feel like as far as larger Smilodons go, this is probably where we could kind of stop increasing in size, because from here on up, when it comes to Smilodon that are larger, like rebores, are massive, so they wouldn't really make much of a good comparison piece here with the TNG version. But for more very interesting comparisons with TNG models, here is the Smilodon next to their Megacerops, and you can definitely see I don't know which one's smaller, but you can see they're very similar in size overall. I would actually say that maybe the Megacerops is a little bit smaller than the Smilodon. Then we obviously have quite a bit of size difference between the Smilodon and their Stegodon, two very different sizes, but obviously also two very different animals. And for one final comparison, we have the Smilodon from Safari Ltd. Next to the TNG version, just, in case you happen to have this one to iron out one final comparison. So this brand new Smilodon from TNG is absolutely gorgeous, and honestly, it might be one of the best, if not the best. I would say probably Rebors would be the best overall, but this isn't far behind, and it's very, very close when it comes to the overall quality, I think, of the Rebor version, but obviously of a much smaller size. However, when it comes to a comparison between all of the figures that we had just recently shown off, I would say that this TNG version is probably my favorite. I think the sculpt is great, has some really nice detail throughout, very nice fur detail all over. I also love the pose, because it's a pose that we have not seen. If you had just noticed during all of those comparisons, it's a pose that I don't have for any Smilodon model. So anytime I can get something that's different, something that's unique, I absolutely love it, and that's exactly what we have here when it comes to the pose of this Smilodon, the kind of sitting down, somewhat relaxing pose, but at the same time letting out maybe a vocalization, or maybe it's just about to lunge up. I'm not too sure, but I really quite like the pose of this one, because it's, again, very different from every other Smilodon that I have in my collection. And the paintwork is incredibly well done on this. Like, it might be the best painted Smilodon I have in my collection. There's just a lot of really nice color variation to it throughout. Again, many variations of browns. I can also see kind of like a darker grayish wash that's been added just to add that extra amount of depth to the paint job, that extra bit of realism. We have all sorts of variations of lighter tones, and then we have darker browns that kind of like spot through the body, and then we also have that striping effect running through the course of the body. And the mouth specifically might be one of the nicest painted mouths that I've ever seen on a Smilodon model, and they've added in all the extra bits of realism you would want to see, like a gloss coat for the eyes, a gloss coat for the mouth, the nails. Everything on this, honestly, is of the highest quality, so I really recommend grabbing this Smilodon. It's not even that expensive of a model either. It's like 15, 16 bucks, 17 bucks, something like that, so a really nice price for something as high quality as this. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that from Lana Time Shop. So make sure you check that link, go grab this absolutely awesome Smilodon, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.